Before you comment on the following video, please watch it all the way through. No skipping forward, and no commenting until you've reached the end. People are scared, and the message you are about to hear is echoed by millions of trans Americans and trans people abroad. Some links for support are in the video description below, as well as the link to the original video. Trans rights are human rights. Hatred will never win.
Okay, alright. Okay. For anyone who doesn't know, there's been some stuff happening in Kentucky. If you're not aware, there's a bill that was proposed called SB 150. Now, this bill has also been given some other nicknames of the Omni Bill and the Frankenstein Bill, and it has quickly become known as the harshest anti-trans bill in the entire country, to the point that even people that are on the right, people, Republicans that usually aren't for queer issues, even a lot of them are saying that it's a step too far, and that it restricts freedom to a point that it's unconstitutional by nature. And that's what the right is saying about it. It's been called the Omni Bill and Frankenstein Bill because it it kind of combines a lot of the worst and most restrictive parts of anti-trans bills from other states all into one. So what this bill would do, it would prohibit any sort of transitional medical care for trans people that are under the age of 18. This includes any sort of surgeries, any hormone replacement therapy, and also puberty blockers. It would require doctors to detransition any minors that have already been transitioning, and it comes with instructions on how they are meant to do that. It would force transgender children who are out at school to be outed to their parents. If any teacher catches a student using a different name, different pronouns, they are required to tell that student's family. It would not protect any students from transphobic bullying. It would require students to go by their legal name and pronouns that match with their assigned sex at birth. It would prohibit schools from allowing students to use the correct bathrooms. So now, why does this bill matter so much? For those who, don't know any people who are transgender or don't know much about transgender issues, it might be easy to say, why is medically transitioning so important? What's so important about all of this? And the truth is that medically transitioning saves lives. Being able to transition saves children's lives, because you can't just stop being transgender. And being transgender is very real. It's not just a delusion brought on by the liberal media, or whatever people like to say. It's not little girls who have been deceived into thinking they're boys, or boys who are sissies or whatever, or men and women that just want to, be creepy, get into, spaces they shouldn't be in. It's none of that. It's none of that. It's very real and powerful, and it is backed by scientific evidence and studies going back decades. I will have sources in the description for what I'm talking about. And myself and many other people know very well that if this bill were to be passed, there's a lot of people who would lose their lives. And a lot of those people are under the age of 18. And that should not happen. We know this because the statistics are overwhelming, the facts are overwhelming, and because of the specific children that have already done it. In 2022, in Kentucky specifically, the number of transgender children that considered taking their own lives was 59%. That is too many. Any is too many. And it is not because of some sick, twisted, queer community. It is because of the denial of access to care and support that is scientifically proven to be needed. And we have too many stories that prove this point. I am scared of what this bill would do. I am scared of how many heartbreaking more stories we're going to have because of this bill, and how many children should grow up that didn't, like Leila Alcorn. She was a trans girl that in 2014, she took her own life because she was denied access to medical care by a family that didn't accept her. She was only 16. And outside of the denial of access to medical care, when it comes to the way that this would change the environment in schools, it is just as dire. There are kids where right now school is the only place that they're safe, where they can actually live their lives and they don't have to hide everything that they are. And there are kids that are living this life in school that if it got back to their parents, they would be in real danger. And this bill would do exactly that. There's the assumption that parents, knowing about their kid being transgender, that this bill would, by forcing those parents to know, would strengthen the familial bond and help those kids and help the parents and kids be closer together. And while that may be the case for some families, that is not the case for all families. For many families, that is not the case. And for many families, the child being outed to their parents, it could be the end of their life, or at least lead to a deeply, deeply unhappy one. The last point I have to make about why this is so important is that this is not the end. This singular bill is not the end goal. It is only the start of something much, much darker. There are already politicians in America that are trying to propose bills that put restriction on transgender adults as well. This is only the beginning. And if bills like this get through, what is that laying the groundwork for? There's something very dark when we start restricting a marginalized group like this that is not hurting anyone, just being themselves. And there is something very dark when we start controlling whether or not doctors can give people the medical care that they need to survive and be happy. And because of this bill, doctors in Kentucky wouldn't be able to do that. Now, this bill was initially passed on March 16th, day after my birthday. Happy birthday, me. Because the Republicans held a sudden meeting during lunch to quickly pass it through, and gave 6 minutes for opposition. As expected, this bill was then vetoed by Bashir. But of course, there was still the possibility of an override, which we were all very scared of. The override votes were said to be happening on March 29th and March 30th. And today is March 30th. So here's what happened. The morning of the 29th, yesterday, hundreds of people showed up at the Capitol building to protest the overriding of Bashir's veto, to protest SB 150. It was led by transgender high school students, by children who should have been at school, but instead they were here fighting for their lives. And the turnout was incredible. There wasn't just high schoolers, and there wasn't just transgender people. There were people of all ages, there were families, there were cisgender people to support and to prove to these children that no matter what happens, they are loved, and to protect them. I obviously was one of the people that showed up that morning, and it was simultaneously heartwarming and heartbreaking to see this outpouring of love and support, but to also hear what these children are going through right now. When I was in high school, being transgender, it wasn't heard of, and that sucked in its own way. And now it is very heard of. A lot of people know about it. You don't have to explain what being transgender is to people, but unfortunately that means there's a lot of pushback. And I cannot imagine having to be a teenager and fight against that. I cannot imagine being one of the 13-year-olds that spoke yesterday, fighting for their lives against their own government. All their speeches were incredible and very moving. And I specifically remember during one of the speeches, you know, there were some lawmakers that walked by, and as they did, there was a mother of a transgender child. As the lawmakers walked by her, she burst into tears, and she pleaded with them. She begged them, please protect my child. Please protect my child. And they didn't even look at her. My friend and I stayed a little bit after the rally. I know for myself, there was this weird feeling. I know it was kind of irrational, but it was this weird feeling that, you know, leaving felt like it's no longer in our hands. It felt like fully giving up control. And that as long as we were there and they could see us, they could see our flags, it felt like we were doing something. And then as soon as we left, then that's it. All we can do is hope. And that was scary. And I know it was irrational, but what can you do? A lot of the reporters didn't get there until after it was over. It was rather short and pretty early in the day because the children who put it on had to go back to school. And we made sure to make that point to the reporters when they interviewed us. The groundskeepers waited until the last group of high schoolers left. And then, while a few people from the rally were still there, they immediately went to work throwing away every flag, banner, sign, and washing away everything from the sidewalks that had been written by these children and by the people who love them. And I understand. It was their job. They're groundskeepers. They had to clean up the place after the rally. I get it. But it still hurt. While it was their job to clean up, it was not their job to mock the protesters as they were doing so, to grin at my friend and I and mock us as we cried. And I just kept thinking, you know, mere minutes after everything that we had just done, after the whole rally, no one would have even known that we were there. And a moment that especially stuck with me was when some police walked by. I got a video, actually, of the police walking over the puddles and ruined messages of love and support that had been there. And just laughing, joking with the people that were washing it away, and casually talking with them as the colors of our rally just ran down the sidewalk at our feet. Just truly felt like there was no one on our side. But despite all that, I still, you know, felt that rally that day, that we had done something, even with all that. And it was only after that, when we got back to my car, that we learned what had been happening inside during the rally. We didn't make it inside the Capitol building because I didn't have my ID on me. Forgot it in the car. But there were other members of the rally inside while the vote was happening. And of those people that were part of the rally, 20 of those peaceful protesters left in handcuffs. As of the next day, all of them have been released, but still sends a message, doesn't it? They were just shouting like the rest of us, chanting, as you do at any sort of rally, protest, whatever. Apparently that was enough to get him locked up. During the debate, there was a senator, Karen Berg, I think I'm pronouncing her last name right. She gave a very impassioned plea. She knew exactly how much damage this bill would do because her own transgender son had taken his own life. But despite all of this, after just a 20-minute conversation, the veto was overrode by the Senate 29-8. 30 minutes later, the House voted to override as well, and the Omni bill was put into law. When I read all of that, I just sat in my car, I stared at the Capitol building, and I just kept saying, what do we do now? Because that's my first response to stressful situations is, okay, what next? What do we do? But right then, I couldn't think of anything. I felt like we had done everything that we could. And I felt like none of it mattered. The people don't want this bill from any side of the political spectrum. The numbers are overwhelming. That doesn't matter. It was passed anyway. And it's hard to feel like anything that we did that day mattered. But I know that it mattered in at least one way. Because the other thing that I kept thinking when I read that it was passed was I just kept thinking about those kids. All the kids that we saw yesterday, and all the ones that couldn't be there. And I kept thinking, how many of them are going to be alive next year? But I know that our demonstration yesterday, even if it didn't mean anything to the people that make our laws, it meant something to those kids. They got to see just how loved they are and how supported they are. So to finish out this video, that has probably been too long, but that's okay. I want to give a message to two groups of people in particular. To our lawmakers, and to anyone who is for this anti-trans bill and any anti-trans bill. I just want you to hear us. Please hear us. To say that a bill like this protects children is a misunderstanding of what danger children are in. Throughout history, there has been a pervasive stereotype and misconception that queer people are a danger to children. We are not. There are many things that are a danger to children in our country. The queer community is not one of them. We only want people to feel loved and accepted for who they are, and be able to express themselves for who they are, and live a fulfilling life, and for us to be able to do the same thing. That's all we want. We're not trying to convert anyone against their will, make someone do anything that they don't want to do. We're not predators. And I don't know what I could do to help you trust us. But I want to. I want you to understand us. You've been fed so much misinformation about our community. In some ways, I can't blame you for thinking what you do about us. Because like I said, it's pervasive. Just please have an open mind about us. And consider the possibility that what you've heard about us is wrong. We're not monsters. We're just people. And we're just trying to get by like everyone else. Maybe that just looks a little different than what it does for you. But we're not all that different after all, really. And for some people, getting by, being happy, that includes medical treatments. There's lots of things that you would need a medical treatment to be able to live a full, happy life. Lots of things. But not many of them are as misunderstood as transitioning is. It's not destroying anyone. It's not a decision that anyone makes lightly. It's not all that physically dangerous. There's only as many risks to it as there is for any medical thing that's actually effective. There's always going to be risks and whatnot, and those are all fully disclosed. It's all about informed consent. And as someone who is transitioning now as an adult, I can tell you it is safe, it is well monitored, it is well researched. There are decades of science behind this. Medical transitions have been being worked on and perfected since the 1920s. We've had a long time to get the kinks out of the system, to get anything wrong that we had to get wrong, and now we know what we're doing. Medically transitioning is a safe and effective medical treatment, and it is the only safe and effective medical treatment for gender dysphoria. And we have plenty of science as well to say that starting young, transitioning young, it's not dangerous, and it's not a decision that they make lightly. It's not something that you just do on a whim. You're only going to transition if you know. Detransitioning is exceptionally rare. And even when people do detransition, it's even more rare that they regret transitioning in the first place. We cannot put the lives of so many children in danger for this extremely rare exception, an extremely rare possibility that any of them could maybe regret it later. That's not right. Like I had said, I'm transitioning now. I've been on testosterone for 6 months. Yay. And it's one of the best things I've ever done for myself. It has brought my life so much happiness and true joy. And if I had been able to start younger, it would have been even better. There are so many hard times in my life that I could have avoided. So many things that I went through, I could have avoided if I had started younger. So if any of you need proof of what I'm saying, that transitioning is good, that it saves lives, let me be your living proof. And countless other examples just like me. And besides, to quell other fears you might have about it, transitioning doesn't make you infertile. If a transgender person wants to have biological children, they still can. Many have. And puberty blockers aren't as scary as they seem. Puberty blockers were made for children to take. They were made so that, you know, if a child starts puberty way too early, they can take a puberty blocker and it'll put it off until they're actually teenagers. And what a transgender child taking a puberty blocker does when they are teenagers, it doesn't mess up anything in their body. It's not going to harm them in any way. All it does is it gives them some more time to think about it and decide what they want. Maybe they'll decide that they do want a body that matches up with their sex assigned at birth. They'll go off the puberty blockers and have that puberty. Maybe they'll decide that they don't want that kind of body. They'll start hormone replacement therapy. All it does is give them more time to think. And isn't that pretty healthy? You know it's a very big decision. You know that it changes a lot. So allowing them that time to think before their body changes in ways that they can't control, in ways that will harm them, and may lead them to ending up like Leela. Isn't that a good thing? And the other message that I want to send out before I end this is to the trans youth that are impacted by this, to those in Kentucky, to those in any other state that is dealing with these bills right now, to those not even in America, any transgender youth, this is for you. Things are hard right now, and they're really scary. When I was in high school, we were fighting to legalize same-sex marriage. Plenty of us thought it would never happen. You know, slowly, state by state, we watched things change, but there was a lot of people that really just didn't think it was ever going to happen. And there were certainly times like this where it felt like it never was. And then, on June 26th, 2015, it did. Same-sex marriage became legalized in all of America. We did that. We changed that. Things can and things do get better. Socially, we are seeing the acceptance of transgender people rise dramatically. Even if the laws that are being passed don't reflect it, transgender people are being far more accepted in society. It is impressive to see how quickly it's happening. And there is hope in that. There is hope in that. While it's disheartening to know that even though no one wants this bill, it got passed anyway, there is still the fact that no one wants this bill. That counts for something. To me, that shows that change is coming. Good change is coming. It's already being said that SB 150, even though it's been passed, there's likely legal action to be taken against it. This is not the end. This is not the end of the fight against SB 150. And this is far from the end of the fight against transphobia. And I want you to know, any transgender person, and especially any transgender youth, I want you to know that you are loved. And you are never going to be alone. No matter what happens. No matter what the people in our government do. No matter what you have to endure from your families, from school, from your church, anywhere else, there is a community that loves you. And I know it's hard to believe. I know it's hard to feel like it, especially when physically you are all alone, when there isn't anyone in your immediate life, in your immediate circles, when there isn't anyone that's supporting you. I know. But it's true. This community loves you. And we want to see you grow. We want to see you live, to have the freedoms that have been taken from you. Please do not give up. You and your life is worth too much for that. And it will get better. Even if you're 14 years old, you're sitting at home, you're not out to your family, you're not out at school, maybe to a couple friends, and you feel like you will have to spend your entire life in hiding, and that you feel like you will never be happy, and that your own body, being in your own body, is always going to hurt. You feel so crushingly alone. You are not alone. We will never stop fighting against this. And we are going to fight together.